it's a very sort of unfortunate, dark side of this community. Car parts and body parts everywhere. It's an enormous problem here.
This is the most preventable crime out there.
This crime is 28 people every single day.
We are number one on that list.
DUIs are not at 2 a.m.
There is no time to drive where you are absolutely safe. People are going to die.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this special Facebook Live edition of Eyewitness News. I'm Jeff Platt. Tonight we're going to be giving you an interesting opportunity that usually people only get after they've been arrested for a DUI here in Kern County. It's called VIP, Victim Impact Panel. It's a chance for people to hear the stories of victims and to hear stories from experts who have dealt with DUI for years and give you a better sense of why it is that next time you should be making the better choice of giving your keys to someone else, not getting in your car, and not doing anything that could harm someone else after having a few drinks. So with that, we're going to start with our expert panel. We're going to get to our victims a little later. So here's our expert panel today. We have Jim Simpson, Assistant District Attorney for Kern County. We have Carla Pearson with the local MAD chapter, and we have Matt Clark with Cohn and Stiles, one of the local law firms here in Bakersfield. Let's start with you, Jim. You know, when I first came to you saying that we wanted to do something like this, the first thing you told me was, before we commit to anything, you have to come to one of these VIP classes. Why do you think it's so important that people get the opportunity to hear these stories?
I think generally most outsiders, meaning individuals who haven't personally experienced the damage and the devastation that this crime creates, are unaware of the real consequences that are attached to this type of behavior. And I remember that conversation, and I wanted you to come to hear firsthand from some of the victims who have lived through that, and to realize not just the devastation that it wreaks, but the scale on which that occurs in Kern County, and just how prolific this crime is.
One of the things I found interesting in the VIP class is that you not only impress upon people the damage that can be done to others, but also the damage that can be done to themselves. You go as far to say that if you're in this room right now and I see you in a courtroom because you hit someone while driving under the influence, I'm gonna put you away.
Yeah, well, it's one of the messages that I pass along. All the individuals that we talk to there have committed a DUI offense, and the law looks very harshly on individuals who have prior DUIs who drink and drive again and take a life as a result. And almost always when that is the case, we end up prosecuting the individuals for murder. And I don't do that to, I like to think that I don't go to the panel to threaten or talk in that tone. It's much more of a informative, passing on information, and trying to sort of persuade them and punch them in the heart a little bit than the sort of prosecutorial aspect of it. But yeah, that's one of the things that I tell them.
Now, a lot of people, when they go to this VIP class, they're not there because they want to be there. They're being forced to be there by the court. Mm-hmm. And we've actually just heard, Carla, you were telling me just before we started that Delano is going to start making people come down to this VIP class. I heard last night you had your VIP class. There were 125 people there. This is kind of a question just for all three of you. What do you think, because you see the comments and questions that people leave afterwards, what is the biggest thing people take away from this VIP course?
I think it's probably different for everyone, but...
Right.
Yeah, I read the comments. Carla sends them to me after each month's class, and they're all over the place, Jeff. I mean, we get comments that have obviously looked at what Jim has had to say about the criminal side of DUIs. We have lots and lots of comments about the victim stories.
Right.
I mean, these are truly heart-wrenching stories. I think you're going to hear a few shortly. And I just don't think your average person who has not been exposed to that really understands the impact that these types of crimes, the loss of a loved one or a significant injury to a loved one, what that does to people. And the class opens eyes.
Yeah, you're forever changed. I mean, when my son was killed, and you receive that phone call, and you're you're just trying to figure out something that just doesn't make sense to you because it's 100% preventable, and your family is, it's just it's a new life for you. I mean, losing a child, and when I say a child, Adam was 23 years old, but he was our son, and that is it's really hard.
Can't imagine. And for you, Jim?
Yeah, I do. Every time I present, I think I try to accomplish the same thing with the people that I'm speaking to, and that is to try to put them in the place of the victims who go through this, and that's something that's difficult for me to do because I haven't been a victim, or had a family member that was a victim, and so the way that I approach it with them is to try to sort of do a day in the life of a prosecutor, and I talk about meeting with the families for the first time, which is usually just days after they've lost their loved one, and I talk about the frequency with which that happens, that it's not a episodic or only an occasional rare instance when there's a DUI-related loss of life, that it happens all the time. It's an epidemic, and what it's like to sort of be a prosecutor and see day in and day out the families come in and have to meet with them and try to impress upon them those things and gain a little bit of an understanding for how we see things, and in hopes that they'll walk out of there with maybe certainly a greater understanding or appreciation for just how risky their behavior is and what the consequences are.
And we're going to come right back to that in just a second. I just want to take a moment to let everyone know that this is very interactive, what we're doing here tonight. So if you have any questions, just throw them into the comments section. I'm going to try to get to those in a little bit, and we're going to have one opportunity to ask our experts questions. We're going to have another opportunity to ask our victim panel some questions as well. But turning back to you, Jim, you just mentioned it is an epidemic, and that's why we wanted to do this in-depth series, Kern Under the Influence. And you have some of the numbers in front of you, and we've talked about them before. It's a problem that persists even though it seems like there are solutions everywhere. That being said, how important is it with the Victim Impact Panel to essentially put a victim in front of someone, give their crime a victim, even though all these people in the VIP class, they didn't hit anyone, there is no actual victim?
Well, it's absolutely critical, and I think one of the reasons what we do there is so important is because we're talking to the individuals who are most at risk for committing this offense again. And if we can change them, if we can get them to have a different mindset or a different outlook, and if we're really successful, if we can get them to be advocates for the cause when they leave, then we're accomplishing something. And so it's absolutely vital. It's the reason that I think every one of us takes our free time and does it every month, because the message that Carla and the others have to tell is one that everyone needs to hear.
Absolutely. Speaking of becoming advocates for the cause, Carla is sitting right next to you, the leader of our local MAD chapter, and really the person who got that going, created a lot of momentum here in Kern County for raising awareness for the cause. Carla, it's been 14 years.
It's 16 years since my son was killed, 14 years with working with MAD.
Right. And in those 14 years, what would you say has been the biggest change in the community in terms of awareness of DUI or consciousness or anything that you feel that there's been some positive movement?
Well, there's been a lot of positive movement. I mean, we work hard. It's going to take our public, though, to really make the change. They have to realize that what they're doing is very dangerous, and very dangerous to human life. And the positive change here is, for me, is helping families through the court system, working with them, helping them understand that it takes a long time to get through the system. How the system works. It's called the criminal justice system. It's not the victim's justice system. So this is something that means a lot to me. They can see it in my eyes. They know I understand. I mean, I don't understand exactly what they're going through, and never will, but we do have something in common. If it's an injury, they know that I've struggled through it too, as being, going through the system and being on the other side, talking with prosecutors and understanding, how the judges make rulings and why things happen. And for the fatality end of it, getting them ready to actually witness photos.
Well, and right now we were just showing some video next to you in the other box of a DUI checkpoint that was done here recently, and you're out there, so you're not
Correct.
only there for the families who end up becoming victims, but you're also out there when there are opportunities to engage with the public and let them know that they're making a mistake. And one of the biggest things that you've done in terms of influencing the driving public is you were pivotal in getting the Watson advisal to become a thing here in Kern County and throughout the state. How huge is having that in place, and how often do you tell people about that?
Well, going through, the man that killed Adam was a 3-time repeat offender, and he killed on the 4th DUI. And sitting down with the prosecutor and having them explain malice aforethought and the law that goes behind a second-degree murder charge, I just thought to myself, no prosecutor should have to sit across the table and say a 3rd or 4th time repeat offender, that there couldn't be a murder charge filed back in the day. And so at the end of that, I basically said to myself that that's going to change. When this case gets adjudicated, I'm going to go to work. And I think both Jim and Matt can tell you how important that law is. It was important to my family just because of really sitting across the table from a prosecutor that is really having a hard time explaining to us how difficult it was to achieve a second degree at that time. And Matt or Jim, if you want to talk
because
about
there's
it.
two completely different sides.
Absolutely.
That this is a document that is actually helping both criminally and civilly.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we should explain what the Watson admonition is. Jim, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Watson admonition is an advisal that appears in lots of places. Probably the most visible place is on your driver's license renewal form. If you've gotten a driver's license, you've had it renewed. It's one of the things you have to sign that indicating that you read it, and it basically advises you that driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs or both impairs your ability to safely operate a motor vehicle, and that if you drive while under the influence of those drugs or alcohol, and as a result of that driving someone's killed, you can be charged with murder. And I think the importance of that is that it really stresses the seriousness of the crime, first of all, and because I think that naturally, perhaps many people don't equate that type of behavior with murder, even if it results in loss of life. And that's they really are very similar. In many respects, many of the cases that we prosecute are individuals driving at incredible speeds, under the influence, not in full and complete control of their faculties, into a busy area, with other vehicles. And in many ways, it's no different than shooting a gun into a crowd of people. When you're in a 2-ton hunk of steel, driving at excessive speeds and not, and heavily impaired by substances, then you're putting the lives of everyone in your path at stake. And I think that's sort of, in some ways, the heart of the Watson admonition, what it gets at, the spirit of it in terms of the language. And you can't overstate the importance of it.
Right.
So on your end, in the criminal side, it's helped you achieve justice for families who have lost loved ones to repeat offender drunk drivers. And Matt, you were saying that civilly, the Watson admonition has huge consequences.
Right. So with the Watson admonition in civil cases, so once you have somebody that I can prove has received that admonition, right? And generally speaking, in the civil practice, what I'm looking at is somebody that's already had a DUI. They've either pled no contest, or they've been convicted, or they accepted a guilty plea, and the judge read to them that Watson admonition, and that actually appears in the court's minutes. Well, if that person then gets in another accident and causes an injury or, God forbid, a death, then it allows me as a civil attorney to go after that person, not just for what we call normal compensatory damage, but also for punitive damages to punish that conduct, right? And without that Watson admission, we really can't do that. The courts wouldn't allow us to go forward with punitive damages before that. So Carla really, in her efforts to enact that admonition, right, to make sure that everyone is given that admonition both in a courtroom and when they're renewing their driver's license, it really changes the way that I practice law when it comes to DUI cases.
Well, and I want to ask you, Matt, because we ended up doing a whole part of the series with you on something that, had I not attended the VIP class that Jim told me to come to, I would have never known about, and that is an enormous myth that surrounds how victims end up after being the victim of a DUI crash.
Right. I mean, that's really why I come and I speak at the VIP panel. I am not a victim. I don't have a family member who's been a victim. So I can't speak to being a victim. I've represented more victims than I care to recall.
Right.
But there's this myth out there, right? And the myth is, well, I've been in this auto accident and now I have a civil attorney that either represents my family or maybe me if I suffered an injury, and I'm going to hit the lottery. I'm going to get rich because of this. And that is absolutely not true. That never, ever happens in a DUI accident case. And so I felt like these people who are attending the course, like we said just yesterday, 125 people in the course, they need to hear that. They need to understand that not only are you hurting these people in an emotional context, but you're also hurting them financially. I mean, this is ruinous to people. And the notion that they're going to come out financially on top is just not true.
Well,
And they can't recover from it. I mean, a lot of this is, I mean, if you take somebody and you put them, a person that is working and all of a sudden they can't work anymore, how do they support their family?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, and I will echo what Jim said, and that is at the VIP class, you know, it's not my purpose to lecture people, right? I want to inform them. And so one of the things I say is look around the room. Look at how many people here work, right? Raise your hand if you work. Could your family survive if something happened to you and you were out of work? And the answer to most people in our community is no.
They shake their head.
You can't do it.
They can't do it. And now they're starting to think about it. We're getting them to process really that they can also, the people sitting in that room can also be a victim to a drunk driver.
Yeah, I mean, Carla says that at the beginning.
1 in 3 people will be affected in their lifetime by somebody's choice to get behind the wheel impaired and crash their car into them. And so that stat is not a good number for us. No. And everybody should fear it. And that's what we talk about. That Jim will say, you are so lucky you're in this room. And we don't go in there and wag or shake our fingers to that. We're not going to get anywhere there. We're there to educate them and to make them understand that their family can also be a victim to something that's 100% preventable.
Absolutely. And that being said, anyone can be a victim of a DUI crash. And Matt, me and you have talked about that's why the most important thing to do, probably if you're watching this right now, is to go on your website for whoever your insurance provider is for your auto insurance and check on a couple of things.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I talk about is that in Kern County in particular, okay, most of the drivers on the road are either driving with no insurance whatsoever or what we call a minimal policy. California has the lowest insurance policy minimal rates, right? That's the minimum to comply with the financial responsibility laws that say you have to have auto insurance. We have the absolute lowest rates out of all 50 states, okay? It's $15,000 per person, $30,000 per accident. And what I tell folks is, listen, that does not cover your ambulance bill and your trip to KMC. You will spend more than $15,000 between those two items alone. That doesn't include time you missed from work. That doesn't include follow-up doctor's visits if you need them. Just the ambulance ride and the trip to the hospital. So what I've tried to express month after month after month is that you have to have uninsured motorist coverage on your policy. Most people don't even know what that is. They don't understand how that works. It's a coverage that you can buy with your auto insurance. It's cheap, by the way, compared to the liability policy. Yeah. And it protects you. If you get hit by, be it a drunk driver or even a sober driver that's just negligent, and you are hurt or a loved one is hurt, that's the policy that you buy that protects you. Because I will promise you, in all likelihood, in our county, that other driver doesn't have enough insurance to make sure that you come out okay.
Well, and a couple of points I want to bring up in that. One is when I did that piece, I looked into my own coverage. I was carrying 100, 300 on uninsured, but I checked to see what the difference was between that and the 1530 minimum, and it was $40 a month
Yep.
or so. So
No, it's less than 40 a month. I bet you're paying 40 a quarter difference.
that actually might have been the case as well.
Yeah, it's very inexpensive compared to the overall price of your auto insurance.
And so there's that. And then also I just wanted to bring one of the victims that we're going to be speaking to in a little bit, Ashley, she showed me her medical bills from her incident, and her ambulance was $14,000 and change. So to your point about the $15,000, and the Carla, you wanted to bring something up.
I do. Jim, when he was talking, I mean, for the stat of how that Kern County, talk about the fact that Kern County, you're more likely to get hit by a drunk driver with
Statistically more so.
Statistically.
Yeah. Well, Kern County's in rough shape when you look at it in comparison to other counties. It's just the reality of the situation. When you look at medium to large size counties, and you take all counties that are close in population to Kern County, there's 21 of them that are populations above 300,000, and as of the most recent statistical data that's available from NHTSA, Kern County is number one in that group, and in terms of fatalities, and that's
It's not a winning number one.
there's a lot of great things
No,
about
'cause
Bakersfield and Kern County, and that is not one of them.
Well, because the layman translation of that is you are more likely to die in Kern County because of a drunk driver or an impaired driver than in any other county, even close to our size, even ones much larger than our size, in this entire state.
That's true.
And people should fear that. It's gonna take our community to start recognizing that they have to be part of the change too. They have to help us. And we ask the panel, the panel will ask the people there that are attending the VIP to help us be part of the change. They have experienced something, and what their words are, to a family member, to give them hope and support, to kind of help educate them too. Look, I'm the mad lady, right? Get over it, lady, kind of thing. It's just they think that that this is all I talk about. I can't get over it, basically. Well, a person that experiences getting a DUI and then going through this class, and if we touch them, and then they go and tell 5 people, to me, that's 5 lives saved at that point in time.
Share the message.
Share the message.
Yeah, I encourage that every time. Share the message.
Jim?
Yeah.
You've got to pass this message along. It's going to take wholesale change.
Well, and with that, we're getting into great stuff. We do want to get over to the victim side of the panel.
Yes.
I do have one viewer question that I do want to get to. This one comes from Ken and Tehachapi. Let's put it up on the screen. And it's really the second part of this question that I want to focus on, because how can you stop someone who obviously has a drinking problem from getting behind the wheel? But more importantly, are family members asked to help? So I guess my question is, if you are a family member or close friend of someone, and you know that they have a habit of having 3, 4, 10 drinks and then driving themselves home, how do you approach that? What do you do? What is your responsibility as someone close to that person to help them not make that wrong decision?
Yeah, I guess one of the things I would say on that point is that, look, many of us have devoted, our lives to this cause, and as a prosecutor, it's a huge part of my job. But the reality is, the change that we can affect is a drop in the bucket compared to the change that the community as a whole. If there's going to be change, it's not going to be from something that Carla's going to do or that I'm going to do. It's going to come from individuals in the community who are willing to stand up and say enough, and are willing to have the courage to stand up and say, tell a friend, let me call you a cab, let me give you a ride home. That's really what it's going to take, and I think a large part of our message is in that vein. It's a community problem, and it's only going to be solved, with the support of the community.
And I've always said this too as well, because people have come and asked, with people that do kind of take that chance, that take that chance, that risk, is what would your family do without you? Because there's a high chance that they'll either lose their life by slamming themselves into a tree, or they're going to take somebody and injure them greatly, or kill them. And with that being said, there's going to be a consequence to those actions. And what will your family do without you?
I'll give a more direct answer, if you don't mind.
Please.
If I had a family member who I knew had a drinking problem and yet habitually got behind the wheel to drive, the very first thing I would do is I would encourage them to come as a guest to one of our VIP classes.
Right.
Because they need to see the victims, okay? They haven't seen that. I will guarantee you, once you see that, you're going to change your behavior. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do, if I knew a family member was intoxicated and getting behind the wheel to drive, as hard as it may be, I'd call law enforcement. Because law enforcement's going to take that seriously.
Right.
And so you brought up a great point, and it's the last thing I'm going to ask of you. I appreciate the three of you being here so much. You mentioned people can come to this VIP session, get the full treatment, because this is just an abridged version, as a guest. How do they do that? Where do they go? When do they go?
Well, it's the third Wednesday at Rasmussen Senior Center. The class starts at 6 and ends at 8. It's a 2-hour class. And if they can just call the local Mothers Against Drunk Driving or go to our website, and I'm sorry I don't have it with me right now, but they can
Google
it. Yes, thank you. But they could give it a call. But it's at Rasmussen Senior Center.
Well, and I guess how thrilled would the three of you be if someone came in on the third Wednesday of next month, because I know you just had it yesterday, so the third Wednesday of March at 6 o'clock, and said, "Hi, I'm here as a guest. I just want to sit in." How happy would you guys be to
It'd
have
be nice.
That would be evidence of a change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And Jeff, we've been doing this class for a long time, and I can tell you that without exception, at the end of every single class, there are among even the most, hardened individuals who come in unwilling to participate in the beginning, end up leaving going, "Wow, I had no idea it was like that." And it really is, I really believe that what we do there is something special. It's something that you can't find in a lot of other places. We really, the message that we bring home there is, it's not only effective, but it's something that...
I think it's life-changing.
I think probably the thing that I hear, the comment I get the most is, everybody needs to hear this, you need to get out there. And so it's, I think it's an important class, and it's a good opportunity. I wish that everyone, would have to sit through it before getting their driver's license, but...
now they can sit through this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The Rasmussen Senior Center on Roberts Lane, 6 o'clock, third Wednesday of the month.
Thank you three again so much for coming and being a part of this, being part of the series, and really getting out in front of this cause. With that being said, we're going to transition over to the victim side of the Victim Impact Panel class, and we do have them over in our other studio. So for right now, I'm just going to have a short video play while I go over there. And the three of you, thank you again so much for coming in.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you.
Driving a vehicle while intoxicated is absolutely no different than firing a gun into a crowd of people.
Just trying to explain somebody else made a bad decision and your dad died because of it.
All I want to know is why. Why would somebody drink and drive?
It's 100% preventable. It's just choice.
The only way that it's going to change is society waking up and deciding one day that we're not going to put up with it anymore.
All right, everyone. So now we're going to transition into the Victim Impact Panel portion of VIP with our victim panel. Right here next to me, I have Brittany Embry Carrington, whose husband was killed in a DUI crash. I have Ashley Hampton, whose self was in a DUI crash and is dealing with what Matt Clark was talking about before, of dealing with the medical bills afterwards. And Michael Benge is at the end. Michael Benge's wife was killed in a DUI crash. We're going to speak with all three of them. We're going to give you a chance to hear their stories. And the first thing that I want to bring up is actually with Brittany, because yesterday was a very big day for your family in the sense that the drunk driver who killed your husband was originally sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. And yesterday the courts upheld that sentence. How does it feel to know that, this is a crime that so often does go, as a lot of people feel, unpunished, to see a punishment?
It's relieving that there wasn't any technicalities that could make it go unpunished. So it's nice that the system's working for right now.
And when you found out that, well, I should stop for a second and mention that even though the man who killed Brittany's husband is in prison now, he had committed DUI twice before that. So we kind of talked when I was at your home doing this series, how it felt to find out that the person responsible for this had already done this in the past, that should have known not to do it. Kind of talk about that a little bit and just tell people your story.
Just super frustrating that somebody that knew it was wrong, that had signed documentation that said it's wrong. If you kill somebody when you're driving under the influence, you're going to get charged with murder. That wasn't enough of a deterrent to stop drinking and driving. When there's tons of other options, as far as getting a ride, calling an Uber, I don't even think you have to call now. I think it's an app. I don't know. Just there were so many other choices that could have been made that weren't made.
And when he's a little older now, but when Taylor was killed, you had a very young son at the time, and kind of just tell people what it was like having to go through, having a working husband contributing to the household with a young son to having nothing.
Well, my son was 2 at the time, so my first thought after being informed that my husband had been killed was, what am I going to do? I'm going to move back in with my parents, which is what I did with a 2-year-old, and just having to go from being married and being a parent and being on your own for a long time and coming back under your parents' roof is a little demeaning, to say the least. But we were able to get on our own eventually. So thankful for the fact that I had parents that could take us in.
I want to ask also about the crash that killed Taylor. I know that the man driving was going very, very fast, that obviously had no intent of driving in a safe way, had beer in the car with him. When they do the crash reconstruction and you find out all those details and you find out everything that happened and you see the photos and all that, how do you even rationalize how this person thought that they could drive a car at that time?
I don't think you can rationalize it. It just has to be, they made that decision. I think putting too much thought in it will drive anybody crazy to try to figure out the why.
And I want to get down the line with Ashley and Michael, but the last thing I want to ask you for now, and we're going to come back to you, is when I was at your home when we were doing the formal interview for the series, you said something about, I asked you, what would you tell to people the next time they're faced with the option of drinking and driving? And you said to me, they need to know that it's like playing Russian roulette. Kind of explain what you meant when you said that.
It's not a matter of if it'll happen, it's a matter of when. So the more times you drink and drive, the closer you are to hurting yourself, hurting somebody else. It's inevitable that it's going to happen. And that's why there's laws against it.
And you even mentioned, in the crash that killed your husband, he died. No one says that the person driving drunk can't die also. And so if you're going to make that choice, you have to understand that one of the possible consequences is that you're going to lose your own life. Thank you very much, Brittany. We're going to come back to you in a little bit. Ashley, we have you next. And just to provide some context to Ashley's story, if you didn't see the series, Ashley was working towards becoming an RN. She had just taken a job over at Ridgecrest Medical, right?
Yes.
And she was going to have this job that was going to pay for her to go to nursing school and all that. And kind of take the story from there. It's your first day on the job and you're going to work.
I was timing it to go to Ridgecrest Regional Hospital because it was my first day, so I didn't know the drive. I wanted to be early. So I was on my way out there, and on the way, she was in her lane, I was in my lane, and she clipped me at the last minute. And I don't remember, after that, I flipped my car twice. I don't remember the 2 flips, but I woke up screaming. And that's when they found me.
And so they take you to the hospital. You were on a ventilator for 4 days. And then when you woke up and you got off the ventilator, they told you what was wrong. I mean, just kind of walk through the injuries that you ended up with from that crash.
A broken wrist, a broken femur, a broken pelvis, a broken back, bruised kidneys and bruised lungs. And then I had to relearn how to walk.
Because you had to be in a bed for, what was it, 4
4
months?
months.
And so one of the parts of your story that we used in the series to highlight is what Matt Clark was talking about before. How much did the medical bills for all of that total up to?
$400,000 plus whatever I need to get in the future.
And how much did the drunk driver cover?
Nothing.
So you're on the hook for that $400,000.
Yeah, and I get charged $1.97 a day for my vehicle.
That got
That
totaled
was brand new.
because you were just about to make the first payment.
Yes.
And so every day you're paying basically $2 for a car that got totaled by someone else who was driving drunk,
Yes.
plus the medical bills. Now, when I spoke to you at your home, the thing that you said to me that I thought that really blew me away was you said all you wanted to know was why someone would do that. In your case, the drunk driver was killed in the crash. Back to what we were saying when I was talking with Brittany at the end. So what do you have to say to people who are going out there and doing this, considering everything you've had to go through since?
You shouldn't drive drunk. There's other options out there, like Brittany covered. Call somebody. There's Uber. It doesn't need to be like this anymore. People need to stop drinking and driving and thinking it's okay, because it's not okay. Like, my family didn't have to go through what they did to take care of me. And all I did was go to work, and they didn't have to. Nobody has to be put through this, what I been through.
And that's one of the biggest things is you were just going to work. That's how innocently this happens to victims. You were just going to work. Someone was just picking up kids from school. Someone was just taking their dog for a walk. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters what the other person's doing. And, talking more about the cost, the impact, it's easy to say, okay, $400,000 in medical bills. Obviously, that's a lot. We all know that. You're still paying for a car that you don't have anymore. We know that. You were working towards the job you always wanted to do since you were a kid. And because of the injuries from your crash, you cannot do that job.
I don't want to put my patients in danger, and I went to school to become a CNA, and then from CNA I went to school to become a medical assistant, and I can't do that anymore because I can't lift patients. I can only stand for a minimal time, and then I can sit, I can't sit like I...
Right. And so, just again, for people to see, it's not just about money, it's not just about actual lives, like in the case of Taylor, Brittany's husband, who died. It's about the case of lives in the sense of your life can never be the same because you cannot, you're alive, but the life you wanted was taken away from you.
Yes.
And the last thing I want to ask you, actually, before we move on to Michael at the end of the row, is do you think there were a lot of people out there that when your crash happened thought that, all the money and stuff was going to be taken care of because you were a victim, that, they didn't think that this was going to happen at all?
Everybody thought it would be covered, but it's not. That's not the case.
Thank you, Ashley. We're going to come back in a little bit. Michael, saved you on the end there. Your story, very, very powerful to me. It's one that really I'd like you to just tell, because it's one of those things where I don't think I can possibly do it justice.
Well, 2004, my family went to the lake, San Antonio Lake, over at the coast. And it was a Memorial Day weekend. It wasn't very safe to be there, we found out. So we were going to leave early. And we did so. And on the way out of the park, we were hit head on by a drunk driver at 95 miles an hour. And it was a 17-year-old girl, and she was racing against a motorcycle. And they were passing each other back and forth. And my family was right in the way. And after that wreck, it was just chaos, being hit that fast. And my 3 daughters were in the back seat, and they were screaming for their mother. They could see me screaming her name, and I watched my wife take her last breath that day. And they're screaming in pain because they had broken backs and limbs and collapsed lungs and internal bleeding. And they were screaming because I was pinned in, and I couldn't move. My ankle was crushed, and I couldn't save them. And that, as a dad, that's your job, is to save your children, and I couldn't do anything to help them. And it was a long, hard process.
And I want to ask you, because I feel that there's one part of your story that, even though I'm not a father, it struck me, I was able to relate to it. I feel a lot of people can relate to is, you talk about emotional damage, and after your wife was killed in that crash, you raised 3 girls on your own.
Yeah, they were 8, 9, and 12 at the time, and just the thought of it kind of gets to me every time, just because that's definitely when little girls need their mom. I had little girls that were in cheerleading, and I had to become Mr. Mom and learn how to do hair and makeup and nails and
pick out wedding dresses. And
I picked out 3 wedding dresses, and it was something their mom should have been there for. And I always say, as tragic as all that is, I'm blessed to be able to have shared some of those moments with my daughters, and I'll cherish those forever, for sure.
Michael, the last thing I want to ask you about is, you've become a very big advocate for victims, being one yourself, and you just preach that this is a choice that people make that is actively killing people. How do we get people to make a better choice?
Well, when we speak at the MAD VIP, I always say that we have to punch people real hard in the heart, and you can see it when I make them all walk past me on the way out and acknowledge me and either shake my hand, or I ask them what they think about it. And the amount of people that say that everyone needs to see this class, they've told me that hundreds and hundreds of times. So really, you have to make them feel your pain, and then they can kind of open up and see that maybe they might need to change. So I finished my class, and I asked them if there was shame involved when they got their DUI, and the heads start bouncing up and down. And I asked them if their parents look at them different since they got their DUI, and they start doing that. And I say, do your children look at you different? And they start nodding even more. And then I challenge them to change your behaviors, whether it's at a backyard party or whatever. I tell them maybe if you would put all the keys in a jar, and no one drives until you deem that they're safe to drive, do you think maybe your parents and your children might look at you differently? You might earn some of that respect back. And the heads continue to bob up and down. And so I hope that some of those folks take it to heart and make those changes, change their hearts, minds, and behaviors forever, So there's less people in that class, really we want to see when there's not a need for it anymore, so.
Because no need for it would mean that there weren't anyone getting
Right.
a DUI.
Right.
And so the last thing I want to ask, and it's for each of the three of you to answer, and then we have to, unfortunately, we're limited on time a little bit, and you all have done me a great favor and done everyone a great service of coming here probably during what is normally a dinner hour. And I know you've got to drive back up to Tehachapi, and you have to drive back up to Bodfish area, so I really
It's our
do
honor.
appreciate it.
It really is.
But I want to ask all three of you, how do you continue to live after knowing that someone's choice changed your life forever? That wasn't, there was no accident, it wasn't, a coincidence, it was someone's choice.
Well, go ahead.
You go ahead. You have the best answer.
No, it has, for me, they had a choice to drink and drive, and we have a choice to live as woe as me or to push forward. And I always say we work hard at it, but we find joy every single day. For me, it's my faith, and my children needed to see positive me, and they didn't need me to be negative, and they didn't deserve for me to be negative. So throughout, not to say it's easy because it's been extremely difficult, but it is a choice to remain happy, and I choose to do so.
Yeah. I knew that Mike would say it is a choice to find joy every day, and he knows too, as a parent, to me, there wasn't a choice on sitting and wallowing in my sorrows or putting on a happy face for Taylor and I's son. So from day one, that's who it's been about for me, and I want him knowing the good part of the world and not dwelling in the bad.
Well, and Ashley, I'm sure you've got a similar answer because you've got a 2-year-old, right?
Yeah. Egan, I named him after the doctor that put me back together, so his name's Egan after the doctor. And then I basically do it for my family.
All the common thread that was what kept y'all going.
Yeah.
So thank you again for doing this, and I know that it's much shorter than what you normally do, but hopefully, like you said, Michael, it punches some people in the heart real hard and gets that point across. And again, just like we were saying with our experts, you can actually see the full VIP class. You can go there as a guest. It's at the Rasmussen Senior Center here in Bakersfield. It's every third Wednesday of each month at 6 o'clock in the evening. So they just had one yesterday. The next one is in March. And I'm sure everyone here would urge you to go to that and really get a chance to see for yourself what it's all about. And if you have someone in your life who continuously and repeatedly drinks and drives, whether they've gotten a DUI or not, take them into that class. Get a chance to meet these people. And you all are just 3 of the victims who speak. There's 5 or 6 of you at this point, and I know it changes every month because people have things to do and life happens, but so
Pretty consistent. Most of us have been there for a long time now. So
there we go. Well, thank you again for coming in. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it. And please, if you haven't had a chance to watch our series, Kern Under the Influence, it's all on our website, bakersfieldnow.com. I encourage you to watch every bit of it as we continue to look into and cover in depth and investigate the issues in Kern County that have to do with impaired driving. For now, here on Facebook Live, Jeff Platt, Eyewitness News. Have a good night.